Hello, my name's Kevin and welcome to the Love Decanters channel. So, I had a request from somebody and they wanted to know about the difference between blown glass and pressed glass. And I thought I couldn't do this without also talking about mold blown glass because there's like a in between, there's lots of stages in between. So, I'm going to talk about those. So, I'm going to talk about the origins of pressed glass. I did look it up in the dictionary. Let me get that out, see if I can do this without knocking things over here. Yeah, got this dictionary out. Dictionary of British Antique Glass by Douglas Ash. Anyway, anyway, what he says is that it was invented in America in the 1820s and then came over to the UK in the 1830s, which is not strictly true. So it depends on how you think of pressed glass. What is pressed glass? So I'm going to show you some really early bits of pressed glass that are a bit earlier than that. And yeah, and people have been pressing glass for yonks. It's just a matter of what counts as processes that we use. So I will show you what I have as pressed glass, okay? That's very early, and then we can work our way through and I'll show you some others, and then I'll show you some of the mold blown and free blown and whatever that I think. I I don't script these things, not at all. No. I just make it up as I go along, kind of. In my head, I know what I want to say, and yeah. So, with that said, I'm going to start with, decanter man. I'm going to start with stoppers. Yeah, so I've got some stoppers out, and let's go and have a look at them. So I have some stoppers here, and these are pressed glass in that you see here. This is an earlier one. So this is a late 18th century one, and you can see these are made with so you'd basically have a bit of glass like this, and you'd have a blob sticking out. That would be a blob, and then you'd have some tweezers with this shape on the end, and you'd press it, squeeze it tight, and out would come this shape. Yeah, and when you see these as cut glass ones, so I'll get this one up, and you see this cut glass one here. In effect, this is not really that cut. This is just this polished up. Yeah, because at the time when they were making these, and you don't see many that look like this where they've not been polished. Usually they are polished. A lot of the cutting was done by foot treadle. They didn't want to cut deep, and so if you've already made the shape, all you have to do is flatten it out with a polishing stone and you're done. So there's no laborious cutting deeply into the glass. You're just cleaning the surface off. And the same goes. So we've got these two here. Yeah, you see, that's how your bullseye starts out. Yeah, and then you polish it up. So yeah. So that's how it's done. Is that bubble there? No, that's just this little bit that looks like there's something in the middle. Actually, it's not. It's actually that stopper there. There's nothing there. So yeah, so that's what's going on. These are pressed glass. It's like a tweezer mechanism where you basically are squeezing a blob and making it into this shape. And yeah, and these are the same. It's a tweezer, and sometimes you get a bit squidgy. Actually, I've got one. Let me get something off a decanter that's just behind me. this one's not that pronounced. There's a little bit of it squidsed out there. There's one that's better than that somewhere. Let me stop. So here we are. And this shows you that, yeah, it's not always perfect. They don't always have the perfect amount of glass or squeeze it the right amount, because there's a bit that's squidged out the side. That's actually a bit that's thicker. Can you see? So, yeah, this is pressed glass because it's pressed between things. There's a bit here that's squidged out. Nobody's polished it off or done anything with it. It is what it is. But I just wanted you to see that, yeah, these are pressed glass. So, I've got a couple more bits that are pressed. I think this one's late 18th century. This is circa 1800. So yeah, and yeah, the lozenge decanter stopper I was showing you earlier is late 18th century. So yeah, these are, now this is blown and pressed as well. So you've got the bottom half, which is a piece of pressed glass. Yeah. And what they've got is a mould. So if you just look at this bottom half here, that is a mould. They plonk some glass into it, and then they put a plunger into it and press it into the mould. You can see this round bit here. That's where the plunger goes in. And then they've probably done something with a tool to make it a bit flattish, and then they've polished the base. So the base is actually polished, and you'll see that happen quite often with pressed glass, is that in order to make the base really flat, because it was a pressed chunk of glass and there'd be seams and bits of crap on it, and where the plunger goes in there'd be bits sticking up, they wanted to make it smooth and flat, so quite often the base on pressed glass is actually polished. And the same with this. So again, this is just a basic mold. The top is the raw, where it's been touching the raw mold, and this and this and this and this is all up to there, I think. And then they plunged in a plunger that's a bit like a lemon squeeze, pressed it into the bottom of the, so they plop, as I said, that's the shape of the mould that they've dropped a blob of glass into, and they've plunged this lemon squeezer thing into the top of the molten glass and pressed it into the mould. Yeah, and that's, so this is really basic stuff when it comes to pressed glass. Yeah, there's no injection moulding and all this kind of stuff with molten glass flying through pipes and being squirted into things and all that kind of stuff. This is someone taking a blob on the end of a rod, dropping into a mould, and someone pressing something into the top of it, and hey presto, you have a pressed glass base. Sometimes for these kinds of things, the people who made someone has done some analysis somewhere. The people that made the bases were not the same people who always made the tops. So you might have a little shop around the corner making bases, and then they sell them, and then they heat them up. So they'd have to put them into the annealing oven to get them really hot, because if you put a hot blown piece like this onto a cold piece, that's not really going to work. I don't know what exactly would happen, but it wouldn't be good. So you need to have two hot pieces meet each other, and you probably have some sort of clamp grabbing this bit, and then you blow that onto it, stick it on, it creates this little collar here, and then you cut it off, finish it off, and you're done. So yeah, so you've got pressed glass and blown glass, and this one is actually, so this is free blown. Yeah, so not blown in shape, done by eye. If you saw a load of these, they would be roughly exactly the same, but not quite. Just it's the skill of them. Whereas this is actually the bottom half of this blown bubble here has been pressed into a mold that's got ribs in it, and then they've been joined together, and afterwards people have cut little notches in the ribs and all of this stuff. And yeah, so they've also polished the edge of this here, but not the top. So this is part of the original mould, and the same with this. The bottom and the edges are cut to make it look fancy, but this has got texture from the mould. I don't think you can see it really, but yeah, you can't really see it well, but yeah, it's got, if you rub your fingers on it, it's got texture on the top where it's been actually, where the hot glass has been pressed into the metal. I was about to move forward in time, and I was about to get something else out, and I saw this and I thought, oh, I've got to show you this. So this is a very rare decanter, so this is from about 1770s, and this is a press molded base. So this is just like with the rummer and the sweetmeat glass, but this is an earlier style. Take the stopper off, and this is a huge chunk of pressed glass, but it's been repolished quite a lot. So this piece here, this is all original mould. The whole thing would have been a mould that it was, and this bit here would have been just straight, but they've reheated it and squidged it. But yeah, and also they've actually, because this would have been quite a fancy thing when it was new. I mean, look at the lovely frieze on it and the cutting. Yeah, this would have been very expensive piece, and it's quite heavy as well for this period. But yeah, this has had a lot of work on it, but the whole base would have been pressed. Yeah, dropped into mould, pressed out like that with that, to squeeze it into the mould to make the shape fit into the little grooves of the mould. And then they've repolished the whole thing. Look at the wear on the base here. Look at the damage. Yes. I'm not fixing that. That's what I want to see. That's the thing that gives me it is what I think it is, and it makes me think it is. If someone went and repolished the whole surface of this, narrowed the base down, got rid of all these cuts and trips and all of this marks and everything, I would be worried about it, but I am not, because it's not been overly restored in any time, I don't think. Yeah, look at the refraction inside there. So yeah, so that's, I think that's the one that I can categorically say this is an early piece. In one of my books, they date these to the 1770s, so there you go. So this is an early mould blown decanter. For the UK it is anyway. In fact, it's an Irish one from Waterford from about 1825. Now, yeah, I could show you lots of pint ones. I've got loads of those, but I thought, yeah, let's go all out and show you this one here. Now, this is blown into a mould, so it's not pressed. The stopper's pressed, and you can see it's got that edge. It's got a little bit of excess on it as well, just there. Yeah, there you can see. In fact, it's got a bit of excess that someone's touched it while it's still hot. It's got a little dent in it. But yeah, so that would have been just squidged. And then, yeah, so this is mould blown. So this is trying to pretend to be cut glass, but it's doing a very bad job of it. Yeah. And if I try, look there, I don't know if you can see it, there is a seam that runs down, you can just about see it. So this is the seam of the mould, it runs down there, through there. I don't know if you can see it on the base. Can you see, look, oh, you can see it more clearly here. That is the seam. But it has got a broken pontle, you'll notice. So what happened with this is the blower would have blown it in a mould that's this shape, okay? Filled the mould, blown it as hard as they could so that it blows into the surface of the mould as much as possible. Then they take it out, They stick the pontle on the bottom of it, finish the top, cut it off from the blow stick, finish it off, and then snap the pontle off. So you do still have a broken pontle, even though this is a moulded piece of glass. Yeah, these are very rare. I think this one is a superb. This is a better quality one than the one that's in the books. Most of them are not blown as hard as this one. Yeah, this one's super good. And yeah, it's got, the rings are applied separately afterwards as well. So even though it's kind of semi-mass produced, because it's not a cut, you know, free blown and put into a and then cut to be like this, because there are decanters that are cut to be like this. There's still some working. So when they're talking about pressed glass and molded glass, doesn't always mean it pops out of the machine and that's the way it is. What you see that comes out of the machine is the way it ends up. Things are changed quite often. And yeah, so this is an example of that, because obviously they put it on the pontle to finish this off, and put the rings on and everything. I'll show you another decanter now, which is a bit later. So this one I think is Sowerby from the 1880s, and yeah, so this is blown into a mould, but there's no pontle. Can you see? That's just the bottom end. The seam, where is the seam on this? I think, yeah, the seam has got twisted as they finish the top. So yeah, it's not very visible. It's not very visible underneath. Also with this one, so they haven't, if you look at this one, let me show you. The base is what it is. So that is the base. What you're seeing there is the base of the mould. With this one, the little triangles here, these have all been polished to create a nice flat surface for the decanter to sit on. So if you look at it at an angle, well, I think you can see anyway, if I put it like that, actually better. These little corners here have all been polished off. So this has been put on a polishing disc and finished off. But there's not as much finishing work on this one as there is on the other one. It's probably been taken out of the mould, grabbed with something, yeah, and they finished it. The seam up here seems to have got twisted out of shape as they've been finishing it. This is not actually, this is not a quality thing. You can see there's all bubbles and lines in it, but it's still, there's a whole bunch of bubbles just there. So yeah, it's not a quality thing. Mass produced, probably for use in pubs and bars and stuff like that. This is the kind of thing that probably superseded the rib molded decanters. Has a similar kind of look to it, the bell-shaped rib molded ones, and the stopper, which is also a bit like the bell-shaped rib molded one, and it's trying to be a bit more like expensive cut glass. You can actually see the seams on this. Is it all seams where there is the seams? No, you can't really see very well. I think there's a seam going across there, but it's not very visible, and it is blown. There's a bubble in it, but you can see, look at the whole thing. Only the bottom end of it is actually fitted to the decanter. This is like the raw glass from the whatever process they were using to make this. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they did this, but yeah, it's not a quality thing. There's not a lot of work gone into it, post pressing, blowing, whatever, whereas that has had quite a bit of work done after it's blown, even though the bottom of that is polished. That would literally be, there'd be a spinning disc, and remember there might have not been any in fact that's got no cutting at all, so probably no steam power went anywhere near that. This, they would have had a powered motor with a disc spinning, and then it's just gone done. So although it kind of, yeah, the bottom's polished, that's actually work and skill wise low, whereas putting these rings on is a bit of a job. So this is where it all gets a bit dicey on these things, and where you start to get that grey area. So this is a Stuart Crystal decanter. It is blown into a mould. The mould would have had these ridges on it. There is no seam on this, none at all. The blower, when he would have blown it, would have spun the bottle within the mould and rubbed the seam out while it was still hot. So there's absolutely no, and then the cutting is applied later. Now, the problem you get with this one, I picked this one specifically, is because, yeah, see, this has got like cutting type effects on it. Yeah. So as this is clearly not cut. This is a bit more, a little bit like a cuttish. This one is cut, but in the 1920s they started acid polishing the cutting, so it doesn't have a sharp edge. And this one is actually, for Stuart Crystal, it's quite soft, and when you rub your hands over it, it doesn't feel much like cut glass. Really, it's soft, and that's going to fool people into thinking this is pressed glass. Yeah. So yeah, this is, and I think this is where that lady's coming from, where she thought something was pressed glass. It's not. There's no seam on this, so all of this work was done afterwards, because otherwise, if this was in the mould, you wouldn't have been able to spin it and get rid of the seams. Let me get you something else that's also clearly modern, but clearly mould blown and with a seam. Oh, aren't we changing things? Yes. So this is Norwegian. It's by Hadland. It's called Ridder. It's from the 1960s. So this is blown into mould just as much as that and that is, okay? But you can't spin this, and it's modern, so there is a seam. It isn't the most clear seam, because obviously the quality of the moulds are better, so that actually where the two pieces of metal that join together that make up the mould go is probably less distinguishable. So let's take that off, and yeah, you can see, look, there's work gone into this. Top's polished, but you can clearly see the top's made in a 4-part mould. See 4 seams underneath there, and they'll need it to prise it apart from all of that. Because when you've got a 4-part mould, effectively, if you think a 2-part mould is just like got hinges like this, and it comes open. I don't have enough hands to do it with 4, but you'd have 4, 3 sets of hinges, and then it would. So you'd have one come out, and then the other come out, and the thing would come out. So it would wrap round it in 4 pieces, and that's how that's made. So this is not like a simple thing. The square base is in 2-part mould. If I can get it to catch light, can you see the tiny ripple up here? That is the mould. You can hardly see it. I think they've when they finished the top, they've taken it off, so you can't see the mould here. They've disguised it, but they haven't been able to disguise it so well down the side. And then the base is polished, and also this is a chunk. It went onto a pontle after it came out, and you can see that the glass didn't quite touch the bottom of the mould all the way, or it might have pressed in a bit when they put the pontle on it, but anyway, they've repolished the base. So this is like a chunky quality piece of glass, but it is made in a mould to create this. You know, it's supposed to look moulded. So yeah, and the stoppers matching, but that's a 4-piece mould. So that's got, it would have 1, 2, 3 hinges, and then where the tops come together, it would latch, and they would have a locking mechanism to hold it together. Well, this might even be, I don't know if it'd be pressed or not, but yeah, that's how it's done. So yeah, so let's come away from decanters and look at a few other bits before I wrap this up about pressed. And we're going to go and look at some pressed glass. So I've got a little evolution here. So I've got some jugs. This one is a mould blown one. Okay, so the bottom half of this was blown into a hexagonal mould to create the shape, and then the rest of it would have been hand finished, and then the handle would have been put on. Yes, this shape at the top would have been created. It has been cut a bit here, and it's cut to about here, and then natural end. Yeah, the handle's all cut and everything. But yeah, so this is another mould blown piece, but then a lot of cutting, polishing, etc. gone on afterwards. Even the sides of the hexagon are polished. So we step on. So you're probably talking 1830s, 1840s, something like that for this. Then you've got this. This is a different monkey altogether. So this is post 1845 because it weighs a ton. And if you remember, in the UK, glass was taxed by weight up until 1845, and pressed glass wasn't much of a thing then, because pressed glass is a cheap thing and glass was an expensive substance, and those kind of things don't really go together. So if you've got something that's an expensive material, you tend to make quality things out of it. So like silver, comparing silver and copper, or brass. Yeah. So this is pressed, and the difference here is that the top half is all pressed and everything. The body's all pressed, and it's a 3-part mould. There's a seam here. There's a seam here, and look, you can actually see where this bit is like a continuous band that runs around, but in actual fact the seam goes over it. Can you see? And I think, where's the other seam? Look there, you can see this one is a seam as well. You can see that the seam goes over the band, whereas this one here, this is not part of the seam, it's just part of the shape. So it's hexagonal shape, but it's 3 parts, so it doesn't, the seam, this line here doesn't go through the continuous band, but next one round it does. Obviously there is no seam where the handle is, so the handle, and these early jugs, so if you see a pressed glass jug like this with seams, yeah, you can see the base is polished, but this is not cut, this is pressed. So all they've done is just they've plonked it on the disc, made the bottom smooth. But the early jugs, the handles are applied separately. I've got a few more like this, and I'll do a separate video, but showing a little bit of evolution on cream jugs or something, or do something with cream jugs. So these will reappear. This one here, I think is a bit later. I think this is a Victorian one, and you can see there's not so much to it. Yeah, this is like post-tax, and everything went really heavy, like the bludgeon decanters and all this kind of stuff, because hey, glass is suddenly cheap. It's fashionable to do cheap glass. So this is a bit lighter, and I'm not even sure. I think this might be a 6-part mould. I'm not definite. I think it is, because there seems to be a seam all the way on every. So this is actually based on a hexagon as well, but I think this is 6-part. There you can see there's a seam running up the middle of the handle. Yeah, and that's how they were able to incorporate handles into pressed glass. And also the base would have been another part that would come away. So in order to create that dip in there, so you'd have it all together, the base would be part of the mould, but it would actually be a separate piece that would then drop away. Then you would undo it, the 6 hinges or 5 hinges and the lock. So there'd probably be a lock at the front, something like that. Yeah, and then you'd put the base up, and then you'd inject this glass into it and make this. And this is the top end of the stuff. So this is I don't know who made that one. I'm not really tried to look it up. I think it was a charity shop buy. Oh no, someone gave me that, I think. This one is Chippendale by Davidson, and it's actually a copy of an American pattern. And I think this is a 3-part design. It is. Is it hexagonal again? How many parts is it? No, it's an octagonal design. So it's probably a 4-part mould. The seam runs up the middle of the handle, as you saw with the other one. Yeah, and also there is a seam here. This is interesting on this one. There is a seam that runs around the base, okay, that goes up and down the sides of the legs. So it runs around the front of the leg there, around there, up there, around there, up there. So yeah, so this is actually a 5-part mould. And I think they use some sort of injection process for making these. Once you get further on, rather than putting a dollop of glass into a mould like they did with this one, so they put a dollop of glass into a mould, okay, pressed into the middle of it, yeah, to make the shape. The inside here would have been straight up and down, so they've just pressed it, and then they've squeezed it in and formed the lip and everything. Yeah, so it's a less mechanized process than this, which is all in one go. They have in fact, these two, they've not even polished the base. They think it's good enough already that it will sit on these. The accuracy of the mould, and it is actually. Trying to think, is there any rock? No, there's no rocking on that one. There's a little bit of rocking on that, but that one's polished, so that doesn't rock at all, and that one's polished, so it doesn't rock. But anyway, yeah, so it's showing a little bit of progression. I'm not the biggest expert on pressed glass, but I know a bit about the moulds. I've seen pictures of them and stuff like that, and you just have to try and find those yourself. If you look in the Wakefield Museum, I'll give you a link to it where the Bagley items are. They have lots of tools and moulds and stuff from Bagley, so that's worth just having a quick look through that if you're interested in the kit that was used to make these kinds of things. And I've got one more piece I'd like to show you before I pack up. I was putting the jugs away, and it turns out there's 2 more pieces I want to show you. I don't have masses of pressed glass. I'm not a pressed glass collector, but I was given this by Jim, who's a very nice guy. And yeah, so this is a Sowerby posy bolt. It should have a big frog that goes in there. think it's from the 1930s. It's very deco-esque, and it's another three-piece one. You can see hexagonal seems to be a favoured things for press glass because you can create a three-piece, but there's room in it to create what's the word I'm looking for? Is this three-piece? No, it's actually, I'm trying to see, is there a seam between? And I think there is. Or is there? No, there isn't. So it is three-piece. So where is that, a seam there? I'm not sure if this is 3 or 6 actually. There is another piece on the base here. You can see the seam running around here. So that piece would have gone in. And then, yeah, it's got these handles built into it, or legs, but they're like little rocket ship legs. And then it would have had a big piece on the top. So this is from the 1930s. And yeah, it's a bit like cut glass. It's actually quite very sharply defined in the way it's molded. More sharply defined than some of the cut glass pieces, I would say. And then I specifically wanted to show you this piece here because it's got something interesting in it. So this is a late Victorian goblet. It's pressed, very classic Victorian style, and yeah, it's a three-piece, but it's got some manufacturing faults in. Can you see this all around the edge here? And this is where the glass was being squeezed out to the edges, and it's cooling, and then it's splitting a little bit as it's going. But they've decided, you know, this is a quick process, it's good enough. And this is actually, when I say three-piece, I think the base is a separate piece because it dishes in and you would never get it out. So you'd have the base, you'd have the sides locked together, and then you'd have the base come up and lock on, and then when you were pressed all the glass into it, you would and also if you think about it, when it was being, the glass was being squidged into this, by the time it gets down to here it's cooling a bit, and yeah, if it was a bit too cool when it went in, it was much too cool when it was getting to the bottom, and it's being pressed at high pressure into the, as it was cooling into the base there, created some fractures. But still good enough to use, and here we are probably 140 years later, still good enough to use. In fact, I've drunk out of this a few times. Yeah, and it's a piece of pupware or something like that, and it's a three-piece mould, and you can see, actually let me show you the mould, you can see it running across there. Yeah, so you got this is like hexagonal again, but then this is all one continuous piece, but then you can see seam, no seam, seam, no seam, and then there's a seam there. So yeah, you can tell it's three-piece, but they must, when they took it out, they must have finished it because you can't see the seam around the top. So there was still some post working on this with tools, just to, in fact you can feel it come out a little bit at the top, so yeah, it's had some post working just to make this nice and smooth. There you go. So I wasn't pulling out lots of books for this one. I wanted to do more of a, this is what the glass looks like, these are the features that you're looking at, this is how it kind of works, kind of thing. Explain the difference between mold blown, pressed glass, origins of pressed glass, what early pressed glass looks like, what later pressed glass look like, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know if I've done a good job there. I tried, but anyway, I hope you like that. I showed you lots of bits of glass, and everybody loves that anyway. So even if I wasn't pulling out books to show you, and here it is in the book, but I knew what it is, apart from that one jug that I didn't know what it was. So I hope you enjoyed this. I might do another one on pressed glass, on a more booky one with tools and pictures and stuff like that. I'm thinking along those lines. But anyway, with that said, I think I'm going to wrap up. I will put the one reference I used in the description below. And thank you for watching, and have a good evening. Oh, please remember to like and subscribe. I nearly forgot. Yeah, I'm a YouTuber now. I need to be asking people, like and subscribe. It's the thing. But anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good evening and good night.